Alright, this time we're talking about how exponents and radicals relate to each other. So first thing I'm going to do is review something with you from Algebra 1, which is exponent rules. If you need to pause this and write all these rules down, you can. But basically, anything to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the first power is itself. 1 to any power is 1. And down here you get into the rules you've seen a little bit more. When you multiply like bases with different exponents, you add their exponents. When you divide like bases, you subtract their exponents. When you have a power to a power, you multiply those exponents. And when you have a negative power, all it does is flip your fraction. So if it was on the top, that goes to the bottom and becomes positive. If it was on the bottom, it goes to the top and becomes positive. So again, you can pause to write those down if you want, but I'm going to do a couple examples using them. So for example, if I wanted to simplify this, well, on the top here I see that I have multiplication. 2 times 2 is 4. P to the 4th times P to the 4th, I know from my power rules that if I have the same basis, these are both P's, I can add their exponents. So I'll have a P to the 4 plus 4, which is 8. Now on the bottom, I can either think of this as a power to a power, or I can do the inside first. I'm going to do the inside first, because anything to the 0 power is 1. And now I can simplify a little bit further, because we know from our rules that 1 to any power is still 1. So this is actually 4p to the 8th over 1. When you divide anything by 1, you just get the same thing right back. So totally simplified. And I know it's simplified because I have a single number and I have a single p. I don't have anything else that I can combine. Okay, let's do one more of those before we go on to our rewriting bit. Same idea. You can do a lot of different steps. You should get the same place as long as you're using your rules properly. So I don't see anything I can combine on the top. I have 1x and 1y. I don't see anything I can combine on the bottom. Again, 1x and 1y. If you don't see a power, it's a first power. Remember that. So what I've got, I have x to the 4th divided by x to the negative first. Remember, you subtract your exponents. 4 minus negative 1 is the same as adding 1. So this is actually an x to the 5th. And when you use this division property, what you end up with is going to be on the top of your fraction. Y to the negative 4th divided by y to the 1st. Negative 4 minus 1 is y to the negative 5th. And that 3 is just still on the bottom because it didn't have anything to combine with. Now the only other thing we can do here is take care of this negative exponent. Since this is on the top of the fraction, the negative exponent is going to move it to the bottom. So x to the 5th is still on the top. 3 is still on the bottom. But that y becomes a y to the positive 5th on the bottom. So again, that's your quick review of exponent rules from like Algebra 1. Let's get into the new stuff. One rule that you may not know, you can rewrite radicals as exponents and the other way around. So this is the index, or the number on the radical. A is what's underneath the radical, and m is the power on that. Whatever's underneath the radical becomes the base of your exponent. The power on what's underneath the radical becomes the top of a fraction, and the index becomes the bottom of a fraction. This m over n is an exponent. So we're going to just practice rewriting. So you need to be able to go both directions. So I'm going to flip that over so you have a blank page to work on. I want to, right now, I have an exponent. I want to rewrite it as a radical. So I have 10 to the 3/2 power. Well, I know that this 10 is going to be what's under my root, so I can start there. The bottom is the type of root. So if it's over 2, that means it's a square root. You can write a 2 here, but you don't have to. The 3 is the power on the 10. Now that's rewritten. You may also see it like this. Those are the same thing. I don't care which one you do, but you may see both. Same thing over here. The 4x is what's going to be underneath the radical. This time, there's a 3 on the bottom. That means it's a cube root. You do have to write that one. And this tells me that the 4x should be squared. Now make sure it's the whole thing. You could rewrite it like that. You could rewrite it like this, with the squared on the outside. You could even actually square those two things. 4 squared is 16, x squared is x squared. Any of these answers is correct. So the last thing you need to be able to do is the same thing, but backwards. So say I want to rewrite these are square roots or cube roots, in exponential form. Well, I know the 2n is going to be what's being raised to the power. I know the exponent is going to be the top of my fraction, and the index is going to be the bottom of my fraction. If you don't see one, you know it's a square root, or a square root, which is a 2. That's rewritten, that's done. Same thing here. I'm going to leave it as a fraction for now. I know 6v is going to be what's being raised to the power. I don't see an exponent, so that means the top of my fraction is going to be a 1. The index is a 3, so the bottom of my fraction is a 3. Now this particular one we may not leave as a fraction. We may use those negative exponents to write it as 6v to the negative 1/3. Again, those are the same thing, so you may see either answer.